I am delighted to introduce our first speaker. He's the Vice Chair of Stop the War and our Chief Steward. Please welcome Chris Nineham.
Wow, thanks for that. I guess it's quite unusual to have a standing ovation just for being beaten up. And I really appreciate it. And I want to thank you all for your support online and in person, and actually particularly to the apparently many hundreds of people who phoned Walworth Road Police Station and asked to speak to Chris Nineham on Saturday afternoon. Which definitely caused some confusion in the police station. In fact, the person who took my fingerprints whispered in my ear, "You have so much support. Who are you, Pablo Escobar?" And it also meant that I was able to get, it was probably easier for me to get 2 dinners and a couple of extra blankets. So I do appreciate that. I can't say very much about the rest of the actual day, but what I do want to say is to give solidarity to every single person on the protest who was arrested on that day. And in particular, of course, Ben Jamal, my colleague and friend in the struggle. And to John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn, who, as people know, were called in to interview by the police. I think we have to be very clear that it is something new and frankly deeply sinister to have a situation in which leaders of the movement are arrested for being on a peaceful protest, and in which MPs who were involved in it receive visits from the police and are called into a police station. This is something that is very, very serious, and our response has to be extremely serious too. But, as Alex was saying, we have to be clear, the movement has in fact been under attack from the start. They've tried to ban us, they've arrested countless protesters for the wrong T-shirt, for the wrong placard, they've mounted early morning raids on activists' homes, and now they want to be able to tell us where to march. The message of this meeting is simple. We will not let this happen. We will not allow the police or the authorities to channel us, to tell us where we can and where we won't be able to protest. This is a massive attack, and it's not something we're prepared to accept. And I think it is a testimony to people's courage and commitment to the cause, that in the face of this level of intimidation and harassment, people have calmly and steadfastly protested in their hundreds of thousands, week after week after week, for 15 months, making this the most sustained protest movement in British history. And I want to pay respect to every single one of you in this room and outside of this room who has been on those demonstrations and has shown such courage and determination. But I also want to invite you to protest at my first hearing at 12:30 at Westminster Magistrates Court on Thursday, the 13th of February. Please be there if you can. They've also tried, alongside the growing authoritarianism and the repression and suppression of the movement, they've also tried the most desperate arguments to justify their hostility. In their Alice in Wonderland world, those protesting against the mass killing of children, the flattening of hospitals, the burning of refugee camps, are denounced as hate marches by people who actually support the genocide. our shamefully Labour government, an Islamophobic government that boasts about clamping down on migrants, a government that refuses to call out Donald Trump at the moment when he's sending police and military in to arrest thousands or even millions, he claims, of migrants. Our government has the nerve, this government has the nerve to claim that we are a threat to the Jewish community. This even though thousands, as everyone knows, thousands of Jewish people have been marching with us. The truth is the exact opposite of what they tell us. Our protests bring together those people in society most appalled, most outraged by oppression, by the suffering of a people under merciless attack. As such, it is a simple fact that our protest movement represents the very best of humanity. And in the face of this repression and these attacks, we should be clear that the reason they are relying more and more on authoritarianism and suppression is that they're losing the argument. 70%, 75% support a permanent ceasefire in the Middle East. Only 6% of the British population back what Israel is doing. That is one of the achievements of our movement. Israel is now a pariah state. The problem we face is that those 6% are concentrated in the highest echelons of society. They are trying to use those positions at the top of institutions, in the political elite, at the civil service, even in the universities and in the hospitals. They are trying to use those positions to create a new McCarthyism and a new climate of fear. And we are here to say we are going to break that climate of fear. There is no doubt, looking around the world at the moment, that this is a moment of danger. The killing of Palestinians continues. The ceasefire is already under challenge. And these attacks at home are a threat to trade unionists. They're a threat to people who want to protest against cuts and austerity, to people who want to protest over racism, they're an attack on anyone who dissents from the direction in which our ruling class wants to take this society. And Trump's brutal first days should be a warning of how the right can shape the future. But there's nothing inevitable about this. The right and the warmongers can only make headway if those of us who stand for peace, for justice and a fairer society are silent or immobilised. Look around you in this room at this tremendous movement. There is a huge well of anger in society about the way that we are being governed. And there is in this country also a fantastic tradition of dissent and mobilisation. Democratic rights have never been handed down to us. It was the mass protest of the Chartists and their successors who won us the vote in the first place. It was the suffragettes, often protesting in these very streets, who won votes for women after the First World War. And it was mass protest that ended the hated poll tax and brought down Margaret Thatcher. It was also the movement over the Iraq War that won the anti-war argument in society and eventually chased Tony Blair out of office. I tell you this, it will be mass protests that force our government to stop arming Israel. It will be mass protests that stop the drive to war. It will be mass protests that break this new authoritarianism, and it will be mass protests that chase the far right out of town. Stay in the streets. Stay in the streets. Keep organising. We can win. Free Palestine!